Let me tell you one thing. The whole world can go to hell. If I want to ban any newspaper, I will, with good reason. Because the journalists constitute less than 1% of the population of this country.
Known for his distinctive white regalia, trademark prayer beads, and a stick, he was one of the world's most eccentric and ruthless leaders. One who portrayed himself as a devout Muslim with miraculous powers, but in a cruel twist of fate for the Gambian people. Yahya Jammeh, a man who was once hailed as a revolutionary hero, morphed into a ruthless dictator, ruling the Gambia with an iron fist for 22 long years. The man who in arrogance once proclaimed, "I will deliver to the Gambian people, and if I have to rule this country for 1 billion years, I will, if Allah says so." His reign was a masterclass in manipulation, marked by grandiose promises, human rights abuses, and a cult of personality that tolerated no dissent. But beneath the disguise of charisma and control, a complex tale of power, ambition, and unexpected turn of events was at play. This is the story of Yahya Jammeh's rise and fall, a cautionary tale of how even the most entrenched tyrant can crumble from the reins of power. Yahya Abdul Aziz James Junkun Jammeh was born on the 25th of May 1965 in Kanilai, a small village in the Foni Kansala district of the Gambia, one of the smallest countries in continental Africa. His parents were Abdul Aziz James Junkun Jammeh and Aja Fatou Ashombi Bojang, both Muslims of Jola ethnic group. Raised in a modest household, Jammeh experienced a childhood typical of rural Gambian life, characterized by close-knit family ties and agrarian existence. After his primary school in 1978, he was granted a scholarship by the government of Gambia High School in Banjul, where he studied till he obtained his O-level in 1983. In 1984, he enlisted in the Gambia National Gendarmerie, the paramilitary wing of the Gambian Armed Forces, marking the beginning of his long journey into military service. He was commissioned in 1989 as a second lieutenant in the Gambian National Army. He served as the officer in charge of the presidential escort, then as officer commanding the mobile gendarmerie, and was the OC of the Gambian National Army Military Police from 1992 to 1994. He was promoted to lieutenant in 1992 and attended military police officers basic course at Fort McLean in the United States from September 1993 to January 1994. He was the head of security detail attached to Pope John Paul II during his visit to the Gambia in February 1992. Rising through the ranks, he distinguished himself as a capable and ambitious officer, earning the respect of his peers and superiors alike. Jammeh's ascent to power reached its zenith on 22nd of July 1994, when at just 29 years old, he emerged as the central figure in a bloodless coup that toppled the civilian government of President Dawda Jawara, who had ruled the Gambia since independence from British colonial rule in 1965. Jammeh and his fellow junior officers seized control of the key government installations, placed Jawara's minister under house arrest, and detained several of their military superiors, swiftly and decisively dismantling the existing regime. They cited the corruption and mismanagement of the Jawara administration as justification for the coup. The minimal violence and swift execution of the coup caught both the Gambian populace and the international community by surprise, setting the stage for Jammeh's controversial tenure as the president of the Gambia. In the aftermath of the 1994 military coup, Jammeh assumed leadership of the country as the chairman of the Armed Forces Provisional Ruling Council. He positioned himself as a champion of the Gambian people, vowing to address the long-standing grievances of poverty, corruption, and political instability that had plagued the nation. He promised a return to civilian rule and promised to usher in an era of democracy, prosperity, and development. Under his leadership, the Gambia initially witnessed strides toward economic growth and social stability. Infrastructural projects were initiated aimed at improving access to basic services such as healthcare, education, and transportation. Jammeh's charismatic personality and populist policies endeared him to a segment of the population, fostering a sense of optimism and hope for a brighter future. However, Jammeh's commitment to democratic principles waned as his tenure progressed, giving way to increasingly authoritarian tendencies. He retired from military 1 month before the 1996 election in the Gambia after he was promoted to the rank of colonel. He contested and won the election, securing a 5-year term and consolidating his grip on power, though his electoral victory was marred by allegations of irregularities and intimidation. The new constitution of 1996 granted the president unlimited 5-year terms, enabling Jammeh to remain in power indefinitely. He manipulated electoral processes to secure his re-election in 2001, 2006, and 2011, using harassment and intimidation against voters and political opponents alike. Despite 3 coup attempts on his regime in 1994, 2006, and 2014, Jammeh remained in power, with the coup plotters either facing execution or forced into exile. Human rights violations became a hallmark of Jammeh's rule, with reports of extrajudicial killings, torture chambers, and a pervasive culture of fear permeating the Gambian society. Dissent was met with swift and brutal reprisals, as Jammeh's security apparatus, like the notorious National Intelligence Agency, wielded unchecked authority in the service of maintaining his hold on power. The press and the media were a favorite target of Yahya Jammeh's regime, suppressing freedom of expression and intimidating individual journalists. He enacted laws to restrict press activities, including the Newspaper Act of 1994 and the National Media Communication Act 2000, which imposed criminal penalties and forced journalists to reveal confidential sources. Jammeh also made public threats against the press, stating that anyone bent on disturbing the peace and stability of the nation should be buried 6 feet deep. Individual journalists were targeted, including Deda Hadara, who was shot and killed in 2004 after announcing his intention to challenge press restrictions, and Ebrima Mani, who was arrested in 2006 for attempting to publish a critical report and remains missing. Despite Jammeh's effort to silence the press, online newspapers and radio stations were established by self-exiled Gambian journalists to promote democracy and human rights. The bravery and the resilience of the Gambian media in the face of opposition remains an inspiration. In 2000, security forces opened fire on a student and a journalist during a demonstration, killing 14 people in the process. The government denied responsibility despite all evidence pointing to the contrary. In 2005, Jammeh's notorious Junglers unit massacred dozens of West African migrants, mostly Ghanaians, who were passing through the Gambia in search of a better life in Europe. The Jammeh administration covered this incident but was later uncovered by human rights organizations and the Gambia's Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission. In 2009, Jammeh believed witchcraft was the cause of his aunt's death. This led him to witch hunting campaign, resulting in the abduction, forced detention, and the torture of about 1,000 people. Throughout his rule, Jammeh's eccentric personality drew international attention. In 2007, Jammeh claimed he could cure HIV/AIDS and asthma with natural herbal medicines, instructing patients to stop taking antiretroviral drugs. His unscientific treatment program was widely criticized for promoting dangerous and ineffective remedies. Despite this, Jammeh restated his claims in 2011, saying this program was going very well. His claims led to the expulsion of a UN representative who expressed doubt and warned of risky behaviors. Jammeh also claimed to have developed herbal treatment for high blood pressure and infertility as part of his President Alternative Treatment Program. In 2013, Jammeh severed the Gambia's tie with the Commonwealth of Nations, a move followed by an attempt to leave the International Criminal Court in 2016. He declared the Gambia an Islamic Republic in 2015. All 3 decisions were later reversed by the subsequent government, despite Jammeh's supporters arguing that his foreign policy promoted self-sufficiency and anti-colonialism. Allegations of corruption plagued Jammeh's regime, with reports of embezzlement and nepotism as the ruling elite amassed vast personal wealth at the detriment of the people. Jammeh's opulent lifestyle contrasted starkly with the poverty afflicting many Gambians, fueling public resentment towards perceived greed and self-enrichment. Opposition grew, with protests erupting across the Gambia and protesters demanding democratic reforms and an end to the impunity of Jammeh's administration. The 2016 presidential election marked a turning point for the Gambia when opposition parties formed a coalition and presented Adama Barrow as their sole candidate. In a surprising turn of events, Jammeh was defeated by Adama Barrow in a landslide victory. At first, Jammeh conceded defeat and congratulated Barrow, shocking the entire world. But he soon backtracked and refused to hand over power, claiming the election was rigged, citing unacceptable abnormalities. This plunged the Gambia into a constitutional crisis, forcing ECOWAS to intervene. The regional bloc warned Jammeh to step down by 19 January or face the consequences, including military intervention. The African Union also withdrew its recognition of Jammeh as president. In a desperate bid to hold on to power, Jammeh declared a 90-day state of emergency, banning acts of disobedience and acts intended to disturb the public order. His ministers jumped ship, and tens of thousands of civilians fled the country into neighboring Senegal. Senegal, leading the ECOWAS forces, moved its troops to the border, further intensifying the pressure on Jammeh to step down by midnight on 18 January. Meanwhile, Adama Barrow had fled the Gambia and was sworn in as president at the Gambian embassy in Senegal on 19 January. ECOWAS, the AU, and the international community recognized Barrow as the president of the Gambia. Jammeh refused to budge even as the deadline passed. ECOWAS forces crossed the Gambian border and were closing in on him, and diplomats made one last attempt to prevail on him to step down to avoid bloodshed. Ultimately, on 21st January 2017, after 22 years in power, he announced his resignation on state television. He went into exile in Equatorial Guinea, bringing a dramatic end to his regime of repression and violence, enabling a peaceful transition to Barrow's government. Barrow returned to the Gambia to widespread celebration as the country finally had an opportunity to start anew. After fleeing Gambia in 2017, Jammeh was accused of stealing $11.4 million from the state treasury and shipping out his luxury vehicles. A subsequent investigation revealed that he had siphoned off at least $50 million from public funds, leaving the country with a debt of over $1 billion. Jammeh's assets in Gambia were frozen, and the US government blocked his US-based asset under the Magnitsky Act. In 2022, the Gambian government announced plans to prosecute Jammeh for crimes committed during his tenure, and the US Justice Department seized his $3.5 million mansion in Maryland. He has denied all the allegations against him. In the aftermath of Jammeh's fall, the Gambia faced immense challenges in addressing the damage wrought by 2 decades of misrule. Reforming brutal security services, investigating human rights violations, and reviving an economy ravaged by corruption required immense effort. International support and truth-seeking initiatives like the TRC aimed to facilitate healing. Yahya Jammeh's rule exposed the fragility of democracy and human rights when power goes unchecked. Yet his removal showed that tyrants can be dislodged and held accountable through sustained pressure from organized opposition. Until I see you again, thank you for watching this episode. Bye bye.